Kuatsinase Hopa. I'm Paris Wise. Thank you for joining us. What does Trump's win mean for Indian country? The questions are tough and the answers are uncertain. ICT traveled to Crow Nation, Montana to capture insights straight from the source, where Trump's support first took root in 2020.
Crow territory is coal territory. In fact, it's some of the best coal mining territory on the planet. And President Trump's support of fossil fuels resonates here.
That's the linchpin, coal.
Buckhorn County, home of the Crow Nation, is 67% Native American. President Biden carried it in 2020. Trump prevailed this year.
With him running the coal, everyone got excited because they would have their jobs back, because I used to be a coal miner, and when he got in, we got our jobs back, and then hopefully he can get that going again.
Trump also gained on other issues. As president, he steered funding to the missing and murdered Indigenous peoples crisis and ran this year on security pledges.
When he brought that, had the funding for the Missing Indigenous Women project, that really did a lot over here. He got the funding for us and gave us money that we had never had to help the people.
President Trump, under his leadership, we had no wars. We had been de-escalated, if you will, in North Korea and Russia. We have been de-escalated in the Middle East. Peace accords were being struck under his leadership. And I liked that.
But Trump's win in Crow country was not welcomed universally. Sharon Stewart Paragoy served Buckhorn County in the state legislature for 12 years. She lost her re-election bid this year.
My Crow name goes to good places. I am a child of the Big Lodge. I'm also a Pigan clan member, and I live here on the Crow Indian Reservation. I am Bidi Yukoli Usesha Homag.
Paragoy believes there's more than just energy and security policy behind Trump's victory. She sees the dark shadows of racial animus.
The first time that Trump got in, then it became political correct, because look at the president. He's spewing racist and bigoted comments left and right. And so then it's okay. So people started coming out of, hiding.
During the campaign, Montana Senator-elect Tim Sheehy was recorded spouting slurs against Crow citizens. It didn't seem to cost him.
He never apologized but yet, he's in. They voted him in. And I believe there was a backlash there because the tribes unified and demanded him to apologize. The tribal leaders sending out, smoldering letters to him to apologize, and he refused. But yet people voted for him, and part of it is that we have I'm saying undercurrent, but it's racism and bigotry is now okay, and so that reared his head, and so we had farmers and ranchers and people that have hidden their racism. Now it's okay. So what did they do? They came in defense of Sheehy.
Some observers see headwinds ahead for Native nations.
What I do expect is some withering of tribal sovereignty in a number of ways, and most importantly, a privileging of natural resource extraction companies, and helping them along with their goals.
And a possible retrenchment. Biden appointed the first Native Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland. She proved to be a historic advocate for tribes.
The U.S. government was starting to invest more into Indian country. You can say it wasn't enough and all that. I'll just say that they were doing more than any other previous people in those leadership positions have done, and we're trying to do more. And so we see this. Okay, this is great. We things might be changing, and what often happens is then there's the reaction. There's the backlash. And so what we're about to see is the backlash, and so this is something that's always happened. You have the New Deal with the Indian Reorganization Act that gives tribes far more independence and something like sovereignty than they had previously, and then you had the post-World War II termination era. And So, like I said, history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it rhymes.
And what might Professor Paragoy have to say to upcoming generations?
We have to regroup and we have to pick our battles and we have to be prepared. We have to be prepared. I said, remember Standing Rock. Standing Rock, what happened at Standing Rock, the Native people came together. And I believe that we're coming back there. But how our people survived was resistance, resilience. And I told those young people, read up on history, look at how the different movements happened and how, and to know that at this point we're going to have to be very organized, very organized. We have to be prepared, not only with and understand the law, but we're going to have to stand our ground.
For ICT from the Crow Nation, I'm Stuart Huntington.
The loss of Indigenous languages is a tragic outcome of the boarding school era, which President Joe Biden recently apologized for on behalf of the U.S. government. Across Turtle Island, people and organizations are working hard to revive these languages. Let's meet one of the language warriors leading this effort.
Chante Maza is Neil McKay's Dakota name. He was a speaker at Thunder Valley's Liberation Summit last week.
I'm a second language learner of Dakota. I've been learning since '95, but then I started teaching it a year later, becoming a TA and kind of teaching on and off for a few years in the community, just helping out here and there. But then in 2000, I was hired at the University of Minnesota. But not to be disrespectful to the university, that I felt that I needed the support of my people. So actually I went up to Spirit Lake and I went to Upper Sioux Reservation and I visited with 2 councils of elders and got their approval to teach the language and the culture.
So how come you're a second language learner? What happened?
Well, so I grew up in the city. My mom is Ojibwe, my dad is Dakota. Actually, I can pinpoint, so when I was 15, I went to a relative's funeral up at Upper Sioux Reservation. And I heard these 2 guys speaking something and I was enchanted. I suppose that'd be the English word. I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard and I wanted it. And I asked my dad, I said, what are those guys talking? And he said, oh, they're talking Sioux. And I said, well, that's us. Can you teach me? Because he grew up on the reservation. He said, no. I went to boarding school. And I asked my mom the same thing because my Kunshi was the first speaker. And he said, will you teach me Dakota? Teach me to talk Sioux? And she said, no, you'll be better off without it. The white people want us to be just like them. And if you're more like them, you won't have such a hard time. I didn't know they taught Dakota at the university. I was taking American Indian Studies classes and everything. And I just started taking German because I was curious and I like languages. But when I started taking Dakota, the first minute that the instructor came in, his name is Franklin Firesteel from Sisseton. The first minute he was speaking Dakota, in that first minute, I thought, I'm going to become a speaker.
Now, as an elder now, I'm just so thrilled that so many young people are understanding that it's a good thing to know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It is so cool to see what they're doing too, like trying to create new words, using it. Like I said, rap is not my cup of tea, but to hear a rap song in Dakota, that in itself is pretty cool, you know, or even to hear young people use, you know, give a speech in English, but maybe they just introduce themselves briefly, or they use words in the language throughout. It's quite beautiful. Language learning can really be boring and can really not be very cool. And we want to make it exciting for people. We want to engage our people. And one of the challenges, everybody has a different learning style. So some really do benefit by the very old school, you're just telling them these things or explaining these things in the language or whatever. But some need visuals. Some need audio. One of the teachers I was working with, she said, I don't do well with realia. I don't do well with like a fake apple or a picture of a banana. I need to go grab one and actually use it and sit dakuhe, and eat it as opposed to eating like a fake. So you have to think about all these different learning styles. And also you have to, as a teacher, have to be aware of the teaching styles and try and do something kind of in the middle for everybody, which can be very challenging. Dakota woha dakapo. Speak Dakota.
In today's world, our personal data, or our DNA, plays a crucial role in disease research and population genetics. Enter a DNA geneticist and epidemiologist committed to protecting the sovereignty of Indigenous data.
I started wanting to become a doctor, but I realized somewhere along the way that I was really interested in what causes disease, and particularly what causes disease in our people.
That's Crystal Sosi, a geneticist, epidemiologist, advocator. The list goes on for the accomplished scientist who's made it her mission to bring sovereignty to Native people's genomic data.
I thought I wanted to become a cancer biologist, and I was able and fortunate to get entry into one of the nation's largest and top molecular medicine PhD programs. And I got there on the East Coast and I hated it. Absolutely hated it. Because mentors didn't know what to do with me. They thought, that it shouldn't matter that I'm Native American because that type of ethnic descriptor really shouldn't have any bearing on my research. Whereas I felt like it was absolutely important to understand the cultural context and upbringing of the people that I want to service with my research. And there was just a fundamental disconnect between those conducting the research and those on which research has been perpetuated on.
Genomic data is used for a variety of things, from disease research to population genetics. Essentially, it is DNA, and it can be used to study genetic variations across different populations. Here at Arizona State University, SOSI has a team of postgraduate and doctoral students, mainly Indigenous, all dedicated to the autonomy of Indigenous people's data.
Too often, researchers believe that they should have access to all data, that they should be able to download the totality of data sets onto their local machines. And what's happened, unfortunately, time and time again, is that the researchers will share that data with other colleagues or even their doctoral students to conduct research that the Indigenous community members just didn't consent to begin with. So this has been problematic in the past. Like, for instance, the Havasupai Nation sued the Arizona Board of Regents because they brokered a trust relationship with a researcher to conduct studies related to type 2 diabetes. And the research team ended up studying other things like schizophrenia, which especially then had a stigma attached. Population migration narratives that were culturally incongruent with their own origin narratives.
SOSI's Data Back movement is focused on genomic health equity. Part of that means informing people if and how their data is being used. And SOSI says this is a right for tribal nations as well.
A data point is collected from Indigenous peoples or Indigenous individuals. That person in that community should have the right to understand or to dictate what happens with that data, or at least consent to the use of that data in other contexts. But also Indigenous nations as peoples and as communities also have a communal right to also understand who's using their data, to specifically consent to different types of data usages. And that's a right that's inherent for Indigenous nations. That's their sovereign right. Whether or not colonial powers or, like, for instance, the federal government and really any colonial government understands it is up to all people, including colonial governments, to understand that that's implicit to being a member of an Indigenous nation. And that Indigenous nations have the right and authority to steward the data from their own people. So, for one, we need more Indigenous scientists and Indigenous leaders who understand the importance of these decisions and wresting control back into Indigenous hands to hold Indigenous DNA on our lands. We also need a global recognition of scholars and researchers and even the public policymakers in different spheres to understand that Indigenous data sovereignty is a thing. It's a right of our people to exercise authority, agency, and autonomy related to our people's DNA and our data.
For Sosi, the data back movement is just the tip of the iceberg for what she wants for Indigenous people.
I envision an Indigenous data future in which Indigenous peoples have the authority over their own data. That once we start thinking about not just training the next generation of Indigenous data leaders and thinking about writing policies that become codified by tribal law, that we start thinking about Indigenous digital sovereignties. So we start thinking about translating the ethics and the policy and governance into data infrastructures that benefit Indigenous peoples. So I'm talking about Indigenous-led and managed and stewarded biobanks and data repositories. I'm talking about Indigenous apps that are being developed for Indigenous nations. We owe it to ourselves and our next generations to ensure that our data benefits us.
Reporting from the ancestral homelands of the Yakima Autumn, Daniel Herrera Carbajal.
Native American veterans often face unique challenges, from limited access to healthcare to language barriers that make navigating VA benefits difficult. Diné Nasba Partnership strives to help Native veterans access essential administration services and mental health resources.
My name is Cassandra Morgan. I am the program lead with Diné Nasba Partnership. Diné Nasba Partnership, what we do is we help veterans and their families find resources, things that they might need that help them with a better quality of life. So it's like looking for outside resources, not just in the immediate area, but different things, maybe besides the VA, maybe besides local vet centers or those type of things. We look for grants, we look for outside resources, donations, and those type of things to help the veterans with any type of obstacles that might come into their life. And so that's what we try to go ahead and alleviate and help them with these small things, because the small things can start to build up into a big giant snowball, and then they feel like there's no way to alleviate their situation, and they start looking at darker avenues. The biggest challenges that veterans face, especially out here in the rural area on the reservation, is just the lack of services, the lack of resources, those type of things. You know, the VAs, they're located in the urban areas, and so it's a lot easier for other people to access them. For coming out here, you have the language barrier, you have the cultural barrier, you have obstacles of just being, enough time, enough gas, ability to move to go to these hour appointments that'll take 5 hours to get there, those type of things. And so you have to make all these adjustments in your life just to try and get yourself help. The other one would be the internet access. And the mental health part, it's a difficult there. A lot of our local chapters are trying to have broadband. I know the VA in Phoenix, there's some programs that are starting to come about to where they give the veteran little tablets to do some of their calls online and those type of things. If they go to their local chapter house, or if they go to a hub, that they can find good broadband, those type of things that help. But it's just the fact of getting that service out there, getting these veterans to know what they're eligible for and what they can ask for. When I do my talks and I do my outreach, I like to reach out to the whole community, the whole family. like talking to the grandmas, this is what's available. This is what you need to look for within, your grandkids, your nephews, your kids, those type of things. And to help them and let them know, well, he's acting this way. He doesn't like to be around the family, or she doesn't like to be around the family. She yells at her kids, well, this is part of the process, some of the things that might have happened in service. So try to educate everybody all around, so they don't just, pawn them off as, they're the crazy old whatever, that type of thing. So educate everybody, and then also to let them know that there are traditional practices that can help them, can heal them, work on the aspect of getting your spirit back in harmony. And so when we work on that and we recognize that, we come as a community, the community, the relations come forward together to heal these warriors. That's what's been practiced before, that's what's been practiced now. So I look at, these are other resources. You might, might not believe in everything, but this is how it is. And then you have that support, you have that community coming together to go ahead and work on your well-being, because it not just only heals the veterans, it heals the whole community. I like to look out to working with our female veterans. If one of the statistics is that the Native American Alaska population, they have a high rate of serving in the military. Well, within that growth rate, the highest percentage serving are women. And so we have all these women veterans who are coming back from the service, who need to know about these services, who need to speak up and be honored for their sacrifice, their time that they've done. I let these ladies know, I've had to educate male veterans, you guys have selective service, you guys have the draft. Every single woman who has ever been in the military has raised her hand voluntarily. And so they've known what's coming up. They've gone there and they said, I want to serve my country. I want to make this world better for my youth, my future generations. So when they come back, they should have that recognition. They should have that pride. They should have that service. So once they have that, then they can utilize the services. They can bring this back. They can be effective leaders, mothers, grandmothers in our community. And so that's what we need to do, and really reach out to our ladies and let them know they have support. Let them know that they are recognized and appreciated.
Denver, Colorado, once a major relocation hub in the 1950s and 60s, became home to one of the first Native American restaurants over 15 years ago. Now, the restaurant Tokabe is ready to expand once again.
I'm Ben Jacobs.
And I'm Matt Chandra.
And we are the co-founders of Tokabe, an American Indian Eatery. Tokabe all started in a conversation in Pahuska, Oklahoma. During our ceremony when we were sitting in the backyard, we were eating. Matt and I were sitting and discussing why native food isn't more readily available outside of our community. Tokabe was designed as, it was kind of coined for us, a community-driven experience. And so, there weren't a lot of native restaurants for us to look towards when we were developing this. What we wanted to do was make sure that it wasn't just, my vision or our vision or Osage specific based on what we were presenting. We wanted to make sure that it was open and available for everyone, especially in a setting like Denver, like having so many people of different communities, making sure that everyone had a place and a position within that. And so it needed to be a story told by all and not by one.
We've created a space to facilitate conversation and a space for community to really make it their own and have a place, right? I am careful to say, I don't think we've created the community. The community has shown that they are here, like the restaurant multiple times over the course of 15 years. And it will still happen is you'll have a graduation and there'll be a family doing an honor song, eating Indian tacos, celebrating a huge milestone of achievement. And then we have non-natives coming in, and this may be the first interaction that they've had with something of that. But the community feels extremely comfortable to share such a precious moment and to sing a hand drum song and an honor song in that space. And that then continues to breathe life into the gathering space of what the community has done. So the community has really embraced us, which has been a huge validation that the importance of what this space means.
I've always felt like this place, to me personally, is a second home. I came here at least twice a month growing up. I can't believe I'm the general manager of Tokabe still. I started working here when I was 17. I just have so much love and passion for this restaurant, and I've seen it grow from this one location to now an online marketplace, and it's so cool to be part of it.
Word of mouth, marketing, all that can go so far, but by the time someone sits down in that chair, you have to fulfill what they desire in terms of a good overall quality meal, especially nowadays when people are spending hard-earned money. And make sure they enjoy it, and not only just the food, but the whole experience, the environment. And we've been emphasizing that since day one. People of all varieties of tribal nations around here, and we're at the intersection of the southwest to the northern and central plains, and so we have an amazing array of native culture and community and identity in Denver. And just being able to, when not living in Oklahoma and living here, to know that you have community and stability is really empowering for a young person.
I'm very fortunate to represent the community, help make changes in the community, share cuisine with people, hopefully make generational impact that can change many lives.
For more Indigenous content, visit us at ictnews.org and check out our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.